And again, I'm gonna take the same footage and we're gonna look at it side by side, what you're seeing now and in Catalyst Browse at the same time. What's going on, people of YouTube? I'm Steven with Purpose Lens Photo and Media, and today we're gonna be talking about stabilization on the Sony ZV E10. And I'm not gonna say ZV E10 anymore. I'm just gonna say E10 because it's way too much to say, and this video is gonna end up being 37 hours long. The E10 is a great all-around camera. You can do photos, videos, but the camera is really geared for vloggers. And one of the questions that keeps coming up is this camera capable of actually vlogging? Now, if you haven't checked it out, I shot a vlog on the E10 from start to finish using the camera in a real world setting. So check that out if you want to see what it performs like in real life, in a real vlog. Now, the other question that comes up with the E10 is, how are you supposed to vlog if this thing doesn't have IBIS or in-body image stabilization? Now, if you don't know what IBIS is, basically what that means is the same sensor that captures the image, which is the little thing you see when you take off the lens in the front of the camera. That thing will actually move around and compensate for shakes and vibrations when you're holding it. And this works really well on most cameras, but the E10 doesn't have it. But the E10 does have some very innovative ways to actually deal with stabilization. And one of them is called SteadyShot. What SteadyShot will do is it will crop in on your video. Now, if you don't know what crop in means, it just basically means that it zooms in, giving you a narrower field of view, and it cuts off the surrounding border. And what that does is allow the camera to focus in on the middle part, and it will try to align the pixels so that when the camera moves and shakes, you're not getting all of that shakiness. But again, the caveat to that is you're losing some of your wideness. So that's why I recommend shooting on a wide lens with this. Well, the second part of this SteadyShot is something called standard mode. Now, what standard mode is if you have a lens that has stabilization in it, like Sony's lenses, like the 18-105 f4 lens from Sony, that has something called OSS, or optical steady shot. Now, the thing we talked about in the camera that's like IBIS, where the center, like IBIS, it is IBIS, where the sensor moves around. Well, the same thing, or the same concept, is inside of the lens. Inside of your lens, you have elements or different pieces of glass. Well, some of those elements will actually move around and compensate for movement that you make. And what it does is it makes it very steady. Now, that's what the second option, or standard option, is in the E10 under the SteadyShot. Now, the third way to stabilize footage is one of the most innovative, and it's kind of complex actually. So inside of the camera, there is a gyroscope. Now, what that means is it will try and balance out the camera, but it will actually read where the camera is in space. So if it tilts to the left or tilts to the right or up and down, it records all of that information and it stores it in the actual video file in something called the metadata. Now, inside your metadata, you have things like the type of file it is, how large the file is, and this gyroscope information. So now, in order to actually take advantage of this information that's stored in the metadata, you have to use a program by Sony called Catalyst Browse. And this is where the magic happens. So once you record in regular mode, so you have to make sure your SteadyShot is off. You record, it records all of this data. You put your video footage in this program, and then it'll show you this little option. And I'm not gonna get into it in detail now because it's a whole nother thing. I'll probably do another video on it later. But you'll click it and it allows you to stabilize the footage. And you can zoom in and crop in as much as you want. But I find that it works very well. And I'm gonna show you here in a couple examples the difference between all three. So again, we have SteadyShot, and within SteadyShot, we have active SteadyShot where it crops in. Then we have standard SteadyShot, which is where it uses the optical SteadyShot inside of the lens. And then the last portion is using the gyroscopic data that's in the file, in the video file. And then you put that into your software, Catalyst Browse, and it will stabilize it that way. Let's go ahead and take a look at the different ones. Now, what you're gonna notice in this, and I'm gonna just say this before we look at this footage. So what you're gonna notice is there are 3 different ones like I explained. Now, there are some caveats and some different things that you have to consider when using these 3 different ones. Again, when you go back to the wideness and you start to use your SteadyShot active, it's gonna crop in and you're gonna lose that wide field of view. So if you're starting out with a lens that isn't wide in the first place, it's gonna be so narrow that just your head is going to be in the frame. And sometimes it may even cut off part of your head. So you have to make sure you have a wide lens. That's one thing you wanna make sure of. The second thing is manual lenses won't show up with the data that work with the gyroscopic data that shows up when in the metadata when you put it into the Catalyst browse. Now, I believe that's because I'm not really sure why that is. I'm just guessing that it needs information from the lens as to the f-stop and that sort of thing, but it seems like it will be able to work without it. But for some reason, manual lenses, you can't use it with it. You can't use the Catalyst browse. So those are just a couple things that I wanted to let you know before we move forward. So let's go ahead and take a look at the footage and see what we can find.
As I was doing my test yesterday, I realized when I was editing that I didn't shoot anything in 1080p. So I'm gonna shoot in 1080p because I believe that shooting in 1080p is gonna give us a different outcome with the stabilization in the camera. Now, right now I'm using the Sigma 16mm 1.4, which has no stabilization in it. I'm not gonna be using any stabilization inside of the camera, so SteadyShot is off. One thing as well is, if you're gonna be using this as a vlog camera, typically we wanna follow the 180-degree shutter rule, which is whatever your frames per second is. So if you're shooting in 24 frames per second, you wanna double that in shutter speed. So if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, typically you would shoot 48. But in this case, since this camera doesn't do 48, you do 50. So that's the case most of the time with cameras. But with Catalyst browse, in order to get smooth footage, you want to shoot at 1/200 of a second with your shutter speed. Everything else can be whatever you need it to be to get your exposure correct. Now, keep in mind that as you push up your shutter speed, you're going to need to let in more light, which is why I recommend the Sigma 16mm 1.4, because that 1.4 is going to allow you to get more light in the camera. So what I'm going to do now is just walk. I will say that I'm walking in the grass. Walking in the grass, for some reason, it gives me a lot more shaky footage. I don't know if it's because my foot is trying to balance, but I noticed that when I walk in concrete, things are a lot smoother. So this is putting it through its paces, and we're gonna see what it's really like. So let's go ahead and walk. This is the Sony ZV E10 16mm 1.4 unstabilized. There's no SteadyShot on the DJI Ronin, and we're walking.
All right, so you saw the footage, and I think all of these can work pretty great, and you really have to look at which one will work for you. Again, shooting a vlog is different than just what I'm doing here, sitting in front of the camera. Everything's static, nothing's moving. And even just running out in the backyard and doing a couple tests, that's not really shooting a vlog. Shooting a vlog is much more in-depth. You're turning the camera on and off. You're focusing, trying to get different shots. You're putting the camera in different places. You're moving it around. You're holding it. You're switching hands. You're flipping it around. There's a lot more that goes into shooting a vlog than just pointing the camera at you. So what you need to do is figure out how you're going to be vlogging and figure out which one of these stabilization methods is going to work best. This is what I will say, and this is what my recommendation is. So being that I had some time with this camera and I actually did shoot a vlog with this, I'm gonna say one of the best lenses, I'm not saying it is the best, but one of the best lenses you can get is the Sigma 16mm 1.4. The reason why I say that is because this is a really wide lens and it is really crisp and sharp. Now, if you're going to be using Catalyst brows with this lens, like I said before in the video that you just saw, if you want to take advantage of Catalyst brows and use it to the max, you're going to want to shoot at a shutter speed of at least 200, 1/200, because Catalyst brows doesn't like blurring. So it wants you to have more of a clear, crisp image. So what happens is when you crank up your shutter speed, you lose light. So you need a lens that you can stop or that you can open up to like 1.4 and still gather in light. So if you factor in, if you're shooting in a dark place where there's not a lot of light and you're trying to get stable footage, then that's something you want to consider. The other thing with Catalyst brows that you want to consider is it takes a little bit of time to process clips. Now, if you're just shooting a minute or whatever like that, it's not gonna take that long. It also depends on your computer too. But if you're shooting a vlog, and let's say your vlog is gonna end up being 8 or 10 minutes long, more than likely you're gonna have 20 to 30 minutes of actual footage that you're gonna wanna actually use. And you're gonna have to sift through that footage and see what you want. And there may be chunks of footage that you wanna use. And now you have to figure out which pieces of video you're gonna drag into Catalyst brows. You're gonna have to wait for it to stabilize. And then after all that, then you could take it into your editor and actually edit it. So this is going to increase your workflow. And if you're trying to do like daily vlogs or crank out vlogs quickly, that can definitely be a problem if you're trying to run all of your clips through Catalyst brows. So you have to consider that. The other thing you may want to consider too is getting a lens with OSS, because if you can get away with shooting and having a little bit of vibration in there, I think is going to speed up your workflow. And the last thing I'll say about which one will work better for you is you may want to consider shooting in 1080p. The reason why is because 1080p it seems like it looks a little bit more stable to me than 4K actually. Now the quality may not be as great, but it does a couple things when you shoot in 1080p, which is you are able to have smaller files, which is quicker on your workflow. They aren't as fast, especially if you're going to take them into Catalyst brows, and things work literally probably twice as fast when you're shooting in 1080p, because remember those 4K files are really large. Well, I can't tell you exactly what you should get, but what I will say is having actually vlogged with the E10, the Sigma 16mm 1.4 is looking like a really, really good lens to get. Even though it isn't stabilized, I think that, and even if you wanted to, you can shoot certain scenes and know that you're gonna have to stabilize them later and then just shoot everything else. It's really up to you. Like you can see in the vlog again, if you haven't watched it, I'm on a motorcycle with my daughter and it doesn't look really bad. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful to you guys. I know it's kind of technical and a lot of stuff going on. I tried to make it as clear and concise as possible. If it isn't, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. If you have any comments as well. Thank you to those who have been subscribing and those who have supported the channel from the beginning. I greatly appreciate you guys. It's like, I don't even know what time it is right now, but it's dark outside and I'm very, very tired because this was a long day. And apart from this video, there was a lot of other stuff that I did, but it took me a while to put all of this stuff together. So I hope you guys like it. Hopefully it's helpful. Anyway, be sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, I'll holler at y'all later. I'm out. Peace.